Good morning, everyone, distinguished guests, members of the press, and our audience joining us via the live stream. My name is Kathy, and it is my honor to serve you as the moderator today. Please note that the press conference is a bilingual event. The first half already been held in Cantonese. We now proceed with the English session. Now let's begin. We gather here today to address a matter of profound significance for tens of thousands of Hong Kong families, the earned settlement proposal introduced by the Home Office late last year. The report we are launching today amplifies the voices of 1,725 affected individuals. This report is supported by 4 organizations from Hong Kongers. First, UK Welcomes Refugee, West Midlands Hong Kongers Support CIC, the Hong Kong Labour Rights Monitor, and lastly but not least, Rewater CIC. Our findings provide robust evidence to the public and the government that these proposals will result in a systematic exclusion for the 50-plus BNO community. These policies ignore their deep-seated anxieties regarding the future, undermine a historical commitment, and even overlook their tangible contribution to the whole British society. Through this launch, we aim to assist the government in fostering more equitable and inclusive policies. First, let me introduce our speakers joining us today. So, Derek Lowe, representative from the leftmost. Derek Lowe, representative from West Midlands Hong Kongers Support CIC. In the middle, Daixing Li, director of the West Midlands Hong Kongers Support CIC. And next to me, Christopher Moon, Executive Director of the Hong Kong Labour Rights Monitor. Our agenda for today is as follows. I will begin by outlining the research background and methodology. Following this, Derek will present a detailed analysis of the core findings in his capacity as a researcher, including the risk of capital flight and the talent drain. We will then hear further insights from our representatives from the Hong Kong Labour Rights Monitor and the West Midlands Hong Kongers Support CIC before concluding a Q&A section. Let us first examine the context of this study. Since the introduction of the British National Overseas Visa in 2021, over 170,000 of Hong Kongers have arrived in the UK. At its inception, the policy was framed as a unique and generous response to an unprecedented situation. In a regional policy statement, and then the then Home Secretary, Priti Patel, was explicit in her commitment. She states, and I quote, "My offer to the BNO citizens is a very generous one. I'm not imposing skills tests or minimum income requirement, economic needs tests or caps on numbers. They do not need to have a job before coming to the UK. They can look for the job once they're here." This promise was the foundation of trust. It was presented in a way for the UK to fulfill its historical obligations to the people of Hong Kong under a Sino-British Joint Declaration. Regrettably, White Paper 1448, published late last year, represents a sudden change of the rules in the middle of the game. By introducing an academic level of English requirements and minimum income threshold, the government is erecting retrospective policy barrier. Many in the 50-plus demographic made the difficult decision to migrate based on the explicit understanding that they would only need to be self-sufficient, not necessarily high earners. This sudden shift pushed them towards a dead end, where settlements become impossible. For those who have already uprooted their lives, this is not just an administrative change. It is a breach of a fundamental promise that threatens their survival in the UK. Our research was born out of this urgent necessity to quantify these impacts and fill the gaps in the government's own impact assessment regarding to the older migrants. To ensure our data is both credible and authoritative, I would like to detail our research methodology. This study was conducted in January this year, specifically targeting BNO visa holders in the UK aged 50 and above. Recognizing that this demographic is often more discreet, we utilize the snowball sampling, reaching out through regional churches, community organizations, and trusted networks. Ultimately, we secure 1,725 valid responses. When cross-referenced with the Home Office statistic, our sample covers approximately 3% of the specific population. In the academic research, 3% is a significant coverage that grounds our findings high statistical significance, providing a precise reflection of the community overall trend. Beyond the numbers, we also perform a qualitative analysis on the response containing negative emotion terms such as depression or despair, translating the core statistic back into the human cost that they present, delivered by the policy. Our data reviews a heart-wrenching core issue in an attempt to filter those who contribute to the society. The government is actually operating on a set of flawed assumptions, effectively excluding a group that is economically self-sufficient and has already made substantial contribution to the UK's access and social fabric. Then I will now hand over to Derek, who will provide a comprehensive breakdown of the data regarding the capital flight and the talent drain.
Testing. Hello, I'm Derek. I'm the volunteering researcher for this project. This study was a joint effort. We worked with a few organizations, and I would like to express my gratitude to them and also our volunteering team, which include scholars, volunteers, and organization representatives. In this research, our target is BNO visa holders and age 50 and above, and we also use both quantitative and qualitative approaches. We've commenced this project in a very short period of time, just under 30 days, I believe, and the team conducted a broad online survey, and we used snowball sampling to reach into this relatively closed social circle. And we've collected 1,725 valid samples, and these covers about 3% of the specific demographic, which gives us a high statistical significance. We cross-reference our data with the Home Office 2021 BNO report and the latest 2025 Immigration Quarterly Statistics. Furthermore, we searched for keywords to analyze emotional sentiments, and we also looked for specifically at 3 groups. Firstly, those aged 65 or above. Secondly, women. And thirdly, those with both high education and high access. We did this to see how the policy excludes people. At first, we would like to talk about some economical impacts. Firstly, this study exposes the economic fallacy, as the government thinks it can filter contributing migrants via salary threshold. But the data confirms this assumption fails completely for the 55 plus group. Our analysis shows this is not a group as we would have think of, and it is a young-old cohort. 40% are aged between 50 and 54. Yet, upon arrival, they face a mismatch. Full-time employment dropped to below 20%, while the number of retirees surged about 35%. More than 80% believe the new rules ignore the difficulty of older migrants face, and more than 50% say that age itself is a massive barrier to re-employment. Here lies the critical contradiction. Relying to the original policy, more than 80% quit well-paid jobs to make huge life changes, and they shift to asset-based lifestyle. The survey finds more than 80% of families use savings for daily spending, and only 36% rely on working income. In fact, nearly 40% live on passive income like investment or pensions. Where does this money come from? Just under 70% of them use savings, and 66% sold their Hong Kong property. Are they a burden? The data says no. One of 1,725 respondents, only one mentioned that they rely on partial public funding. This proves the group as an absolute zero burden demographic. They even pay the IHS and use the private healthcare, reducing pressure on NHS. These act as a self-funded residence. They inject liquidity directly into the British economy. So forcing them into a wage model punishes them twice. Firstly, they face an age discrimination at work. Secondly, they lose settlement rights because they can't get high-paid jobs. This ignores their human capital and destroys their plan to be self-sufficient asset holder. Therefore, barring this group to reduce fiscal burden makes no sense. More than 90% of them say that the policy ignores their assets reality, which is high assets. And more than 95% urge the UK will lose law-abiding self-sufficient residents. This is why nearly 60% demand proof of assets instead of income threshold. For those aged 65 or above, the shock is brutal. More than 80% have fully retired, and only 1.4% work full-time. With more than 80% relying on savings, a salary threshold blocks their path to settlement. Also, the language barrier is huge. Over half says that B2 requirement creates survival anxiety. More than 90% demand age exemption. Without this, these vulnerable seniors face forced migration. Because BNO families rely on intergenerational care, this will separate families and cause humanitarian disaster. Government calculations often look only at income tax. They ignore VAT and stamp duty. For this group, consumption often exceeds that of wage earners. This generates continuous VAT. Also, more than 60% sold property in Hong Kong, and they are likely putting that money into UK housing and generating stamp duty. Defining contribution only as work income is wrong. If the policy forced them to sell up, the supply shock would destabilize local housing markets. Let's talk about capital flux. Our analysis reviews a potential national cost. Because of Hong Kong's rule, 94.6% of our interviewee face a double bind. Without UK's permanent residents, ILR, they cannot withdraw the MPF. And this is the MPF deadlock. The BNO visa not recognized as a proof of permanent departure in Hong Kong. So 94.7% say that the new policy has disrupted their plans. Based on the data and the Home Office estimates of 55,000 arrivals, we estimate the MPF assets held by this group is totally 36.4 billion Hong Kong dollars. That is 3.64 billion pounds. If they are forced to leave, the UK risks a capital flight of 3.43 billion pounds. This is a massive capital indeed for the UK economy. More than 80% agree that this affected the property buying plans. If we talk about property buying using the November 2025 house price index, this locked capital could buy over 12,400 homes by cash. This is only using their pensions, not saying that, not mentioning their own capital. And if strict rules force them out, this capital will never enter UK, and the private capital will leave, and it's definitely an economic goal. Beyond MPF, there is a direct capital flight. Nearly 90% warn of more separated families, and more than 60% say that the policy. This is worse. This is more worse than the talent group. Talent group means those with like high education and both high income, not high assets. Nearly 100% says that they will withdraw funds already placed in the UK, and they can easily move elsewhere or return to Hong Kong. This triggers a chain reaction. Firstly, loss of deposit. Secondly, property sell-off. Thirdly, reduced consumption. And because of BNO family's value ties, if the parent leaves, the young workforce will follow, and the UK will lose both capital and labour. Then we should consider sunk costs. Nearly 70% use their savings, over 60% sold their properties, and 60% of them quit jobs in Hong Kong. And these were investments based on the 2021 promise. By changing it now, the government is effectively taking these sunk costs. This damages UK's reputation. Global talent will see UK as a high regulatory risk. The loss of confidence will cost far more than any savings from the policy. Nonetheless, there will be a large talent drain. The study identifies this policy as a dangerous elite purge. We have a talent group, which defines as graduates over 1 million Hong Kong dollars in MPF, in their pensions alone, having 1 million Hong Kong dollars, which is 100,000 pounds. And only this group make up 13% of our sample. And the government should fight to keep them. Yet, nearly 80% expect to fail the new requirements. And this is the elite paradox. 94% call it moving the goalpost, and 77% of this group cannot meet the values, the wage rules, because they basically do not rely on wages. And more than 90% say the rules ignore their assets, and nearly 80% say that this destroys their retirement plans. The mismatch forces extreme reaction. 30% of them are planning to leave, and this is higher than average. If the policy insists on wages, it expels capital holders. It creates adverse selection as exactly opposite of attracting talent. And also we will mention discrimination and justice. The policy also disproportionately impacts on women. This could be indirect discrimination under the Equality Act 2010. Women are nearly 60% of the respondents. The number of family caregivers doubled after moving. In this group, women do over 76% of family care. This reflects women often do unpaid work so the younger generation can work. And earned settlement penalize these women. It forces a dilemma. Firstly, abandoning care for low-paid works, or either face remigration. The stronger backlash comes from the breach of legitimate expectation. nearly 100% understood that they would settle after 5 years. 94% of them understood that was no minimum income requirement. More than 80% saw this as a humanitarian and not economic route. So most moved because of no income check clause. And nearly 100% view this pivot as a broken promise. This erodes trust, subjecting humanitarian migrants to strict economic metrics after they have burned their bridges. This is mortally contentious. Finally, the humanitarian disaster. It has triggered a mental health disaster. Nearly 100% firstly believe the promise is broken, and we have recorded 35 cases involving death, suicide, or depression. Without us asking, they write it in their own words. This indicates a risk of life. Take two cases. Firstly, telling us they might suicide, and secondly, telling that they already have anxiety and depression. And these highlight the human cost behind it. And raising English requirement to B2 is literally administrative violence, as 74% of them support exemption, and 18% of them already force rejected English proof. These barriers push legal residents towards become illegal migrants. That's ridiculous. If this policy is unchanged as they propose, the unsettlement will be a total policy failure. And it ignores asset space consumption, it triggers a time drain, and it loses billions in capitals. And this sparks a humanitarian crisis. If the government wants to reduce burden, they can't. But the result will be a lose-lose. So, at last, we urge the government to firstly honor its pledge, secondly, maintain existing arrangement, thirdly, recognize diverse contributions, fourthly, prevent discrimination, fifth, maintain English exemption, and last, to avert this disaster. And this is my presentation. Let's hand it back to our host. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. For that clear breakdown of the data, it clearly shows from the report, this new policy not just provides and offer economic disaster and loss to the country, to the family and the individual, and also created avoidable humanitarian crisis. The evidence shows that the policy shift is a significant economic losses. Beyond the statistic, we must also address the tangible impact on labor rights and everyday lives of our Hong Kong community members. To provide these insights, I would like to invite Christopher Moon, Executive Director of Hong Kong Labor Rights Monitor, and Tai Xin Li, Director of West Midlands Hong Kong Support CIC, to share their professional expertise and frontline observations.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. First of all, I would like to say I believe the government consultation document should not confuse economic migration with the BNO visa scheme, as the two are founded on fundamentally different principles. The BNO route was introduced in response to the Chinese government's imposition of the national security law in Hong Kong, which breached the joint declaration and undermined Hong Kong's freedoms. On moral and historical grounds, the UK offered the BNO scheme as a lifeboat for Hong Kong people. Any adjustments to language or income requirements aimed at attracting specific talent categories should therefore not apply to the BNO route, whose purpose is humanitarian rather than economic. Among the more than 180,000 BNO Hong Kongers who have already relocated to the UK, many will become eligible to apply for indefinite leave to remain within the coming months or year. Changing the requirements at this critical stage would undermine the Hong Kong government, would undermine the UK government's original commitments and violate the legitimate expectations of the approved applicants. Such an approach would constitute a breach of trust. We therefore strongly urge the government to honor its promise by maintaining the existing B1 English language requirement and by not introducing a minimum income threshold. Survey findings show strong opposition among middle-aged and older Hong Kong migrants to the proposed introduction of additional thresholds. Over 85% of respondents described the proposals as moving the goalposts and deeply unfair. More than half believe they would be unlikely to meet the new requirements, while about 85% lack confidence in passing them. Imposing excessively high thresholds would leave many feeling excluded and would run counter to the government's state goal of promoting social integration. The prospect of sudden change to BNO conditions has already caused significant distress within the community. Many respondents report anxiety, feelings of betrayal, and fears of being forced to return to Hong Kong or be separated from their families. These proposals have clearly generated serious uncertainty and psychological pressure. We urge the UK government to clarify its position as soon as possible and to confirm that settlement requirements will remain unchanged. The consultation also adopts a very narrow definition of contribution to society. Contribution should not be measured only by income. Many middle-aged and older Hong Kong migrants rely on savings from Hong Kong to retire early or can only work very limited hours due to declining health. Adapting to a new labour market and workplace culture here in the UK can be very challenging at this stage of life. The proposed minimum annual income threshold is inflexible and unrealistic and would disrupt plans made prior to migration. Finally, we urge the UK government not to overlook Hong Kong people who are ineligible for BNO status and are currently seeking political asylum in the UK. Like BNO holders, they were forced to exile due to persecution for resisting the erosion of Hong Kong's freedoms. Under the proposed reforms, even recognized refugees would face an extension of the qualifying period for settlement from 5 years to 20 years. The UK's moral responsibility towards Hong Kong must extend to these persecuted political refugees, ensuring that their settlement conditions remain unchanged. Many are young people who have already sacrificed greatly in our struggle for democracy. Please do not allow them to become a forgotten group. Thank you.
First time, I'm Tyson Lee, on behalf of the West Mainland Hong Kong Support CIC. I just want to mention a minor group which we believe to be smaller in number, consists of Hong Kong migrants who may not have brought sufficient financial resources with them. They rely on employment in the UK to make a living. Our organization have received many cases where uncertainty over the length and the stability of visa status has negatively affected their employment opportunities. In addition, the income requirements under the new policy may result in a longer time being required to obtain permanent residency. This could create a reverse cycle. Furthermore, visa renewal involves sufficient costs, making it more difficult for them to accumulate assets and instead increasing the likelihood that they may need to rely on the social welfare in the UK. In light of the above, we sincerely hope that the UK government will conduct a more comprehensive policy impact assessment of the proposed new policies and engage in meetings and discussion with more Hong Kong migrant groups in the UK in order to better understand the potential impacts of this policy on Hong Kong migrants. Finally, we urge the UK government to carefully reconsider wherever it is appropriate to proceed with those policies, so as to avoid a loss-loss situation to both UK society and the Hong Kong migrants. This is my voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you for both sharing from the both honoured guests. We now consider that the new policy not just impacting all immigrants, the 50+ BNO visas holders, and also about asylum seekers and all of those who are now seeking to get asylum. So we will now open the floor for questions from the press. We welcome inquiries regarding the research findings, policies recommendations, or the insights shared by our speakers. Please raise your questions and state your name. Thank you. So thank you. I think the Q&A section we already sufficed in the Cantonese part. So thank you everyone's joining for today's press conference. 今日嘅記者招待會都到此結束啦。咁我哋到最後都希望有個信息去傳遞俾各位。We're going to deliver a message to the British society and also the whole UK government.
We have some voice to say. Stand with Hong Kong.
Fight for justice.
Stand with Hong Kong.
Fight for justice.
Stand with Hong Kong.
Fight for justice.
Thank you. Thank you. 最後尾都多謝咁多位即係幫手有傳遞過呢份文件嘅團體啦，佢哋都唔喺同埋有填寫呢份文件嘅朋友嘅，多謝大家。咁跟住記者呢個會到呢個為止啦，多謝大家。